There you go.
Great. Hi, my name is Jennifer Chess, and I'm the marketing librarian at the United States Military Academy Library at West Point. Along with my master's in information science, I have a bachelor's in marketing and finance. So building a brand, communicating information, and analyzing how users' perceptions are influenced has always been something that has interested me personally. While I've worked at the USMA Library for over 15 years, I joined the library's marketing efforts in January 2020. While our rapidly changing environment over the past several years presents new and different challenges and opportunities when it comes to marketing, throughout this presentation, I'll show you how utilizing data will help you flex through any hurdles you may encounter. So, have you ever spent days, weeks, or even months on planning an event or program or even an initiative for your library, only to be disappointed by low attendance, participation, or engagement? All that work you put into something you know would benefit your users. If only they just show up, if only they click on that link or watch that video. Creating awareness for your activities is an incredibly vital part of any activity planning and should never be viewed as irrelevant or inconsequential. I like to use the phrase, they don't know what they don't know. If you don't tell them, how are they to know about this awesome thing that you have invested so much time into doing? While your marketing efforts should be multifaceted and nuanced, all marketing efforts, no matter how narrow or broad, start with defining two key elements. The first element is your target audience, and the second is your key performance indicators. If you don't take the time to thoroughly define these two elements, you won't ever be able to determine if your marketing campaign was successful or not. You won't be able to evaluate what you could do better or different for the next marketing campaign. You won't be able to leverage the success you achieved with your marketing campaign and the brand recognition you gained for another marketing campaign for the future. The first element, in my opinion, is the most important, and you should take your time and be thorough in researching. You cannot create an effective marketing plan without having detailed information about those people that you're targeting. You'll need to create a holistic, well-rounded picture of your target audience, or rather, in most cases, audiences. I recommend you start with a general brainstorming session. Be thorough. Write down every single segmented audience you can think of. Think about those users who participated in similar events in the past, including those that surprised you. Did a family with young children show up to a tea ceremony program that you had targeted towards adults? Looking at those outliers can help you find gaps in your programming and services and new opportunities for marketing. Ask your colleagues for their ideas. And don't forget about your patrons. Find out who they think would be interested in your program or initiative. You may be surprised by the answers, but this is just the beginning. It's important to look at that list and understand its limitations. While there's certainly value in starting with a list made from your previous experiences, basing your marketing decisions solely on assumptions leaves so many opportunities on the table. We're information professionals and need to leverage that expertise to make sure that the decisions we're making are based on true data. Now, there's lots of ways to get that data. I recommend you start by looking at census data. Census.gov has a wealth of information that is fairly easy to search and use. If you're a library that serves your surrounding community, you can tailor your census search to particular zip codes. Some data points that I think would be particularly relevant would be age, gender, race, languages spoken at home, education levels of adults in households, income range, housing situation, meaning one family dwelling versus multifamily dwelling, children per household, their ages. You get the idea. There's lots of data points that you should be looking at. You can also harvest circulation and patron data from your ILS and compare it to the census information you have to see if your patrons are representative of the larger community or if only particular subsects of the community are utilizing your library. If you're a special or academic library, comparing the data in your ILS and large-scale census data would potentially give you better information than just looking at local census data. And while I always advocate for protecting patron privacy, there are ways to harvest relevant statistical information without breaking that privacy. For example, at USMA, we think it's important to be able to analyze how different segmented audiences within our overall population use our resources and services. So we anonymize our patron data, but collect information such as academic year, academic department, and others. With the help of that information, we can start to see trends and different needs and usages within our segmented audiences. We can see if freshmen have different needs than seniors, how faculty use us versus students. If you aren't already collecting data from prior events or initiatives, now is the time to start. We realized that for marketing and outreach purposes, it was important to collect detailed data from those events. Not only things like demographic information about those users, but things like how they found out about the event or initiative. That information is priceless in helping steer your marketing decisions going forward. And take advantage of any published reports or studies that may have already been done on your target audiences. PewResearch.org has some good library usage reports. Maybe your local government published an analysis of local census data. As we see local community demographics change thanks to folks moving from the city to the suburbs and changes in workforces, et cetera, organizations may be publishing updated data that reflects those changes. Most large organizations collect and analyze large amounts of data. So if you're an academic library, look to those departments that publish data about your faculty and student populations. It'll save you a ton of time. Once you have that data, you should be able to start to build an accurate, thorough picture of who your target audiences actually are and what makes them unique. You can start to define what they want. What are their goals? Why would they want to come to your event or use one of your services? And this can be nuanced and very different amongst different segmented audiences. For example, say you're planning a children's program. There are likely several different audiences that would be interested in coming to your event. One audience might be stay-at-home parents with a single child who are looking to provide socializing opportunities for their child. Another audience might be immigrant parents who are looking to provide opportunities to help strengthen their children's language skills. Those two audiences have very different needs and goals, so messaging to each of those audiences would look really different. And then identify how they get their information, both passive and active. This is something I personally am still struggling to understand. For example, some research suggests that Gen Zers rarely actively look for news. Instead, they rely on the information that they get through social media to provide them with all of the news that they care to consume. However, our data shows that our Gen Zers at USMA, aka our students, makes up less than 20% of our followers on social media, namely Instagram. So if they're not following us on social media, it's fair to say that we need to either one, up our social media game to increase followers in the 18 to 24 age range, or two, find more effective ways to push out information to them. In fact, one of the unique marketing opportunities that we found to be very effective based on student feedback is to have our signs run on slides that are broadcast in the cafeteria. While this particular data point maybe isn't relevant to your situation, my point again is that you have to look at the data to determine the best ways to reach them based on them and their behaviors. So you now have a comprehensive definition of your target audiences. Now it's time to identify your key performance indicators. These are the data points that you're going to look at to be able to evaluate your marketing campaign after it's complete. Think about what your main goal or goals are for the program, event, or initiative you're planning. Are you looking to increase library counts? Do you have a target registration and/or attendance rate that you're hoping to achieve? Are you looking to increase clicks on a resource or increase usage of a service? Are you defining the success of your activity? Clicks on a website, registration counts, visitor counts, whatever it is, remember that it needs to be measurable. And from a marketing standpoint, what would a successful conversion look like? Conversion refers to the point when your user performs the action that you want them to take. This could be clicking on the link in an email, accessing the link on a QR code, actively registering for an event, asking a library a reference question, or initiating a chat with staff via your website. Figuring out what your desired action is will help guide your decisions on message planning and content creation. And don't forget that this may look really different for different audiences. Before we get into some of the details of planning, I want to take a minute to highlight the difference between effective and efficient. I'll give one of my own failures as an example. In the spring of 2020, I started a library newsletter that was sent out via email. In fact, I started two, targeted at different audiences. This was a huge team effort and took many, many staff hours to create the finished products. They looked great, had really targeted, useful information, but the conversion rate on the links we included within the newsletter were almost across the board dismal. We published several sets of newsletters over the next year and a half. Again, spending a ton of staff hours to create thoughtful, relevant content that was targeted towards our core audiences, which in our case are faculty and students. While the numbers got better, they were never great. My thought process for creating a newsletter was that it would be an efficient way to share information with our faculty and students. And email blast is easy to do, but we ultimately found that it wasn't effective at all. You'll undoubtedly find in your own experience with data to support it that there are some ways that are far more effective at reaching your target audiences than others. And the data may surprise you, and you very well may have to have different strategies for different audiences. But the goal should always be to work better, not harder. So I've talked a lot about the background research you need to do. Now let's talk about the actual messaging and content creation planning. There are three different silos of content, and you need to think about what your goal is through your messaging. This is when you need to refer back to the knowledge you now have about your target audiences and the key performance indicators that you're looking at. It's easy to get sucked into the idea that we're all educators and therefore all of our messaging should educate. Or conversely, we got great engagement on that social media meme we posted. So let's stick with entertaining content. It doesn't have to only be one, but understanding the different types of messaging will help you create more nuanced, multifaceted, effective messaging. Now let's look at the big picture of your marketing campaign. How long will the campaign run? What is the suspense state? You don't want to run the same content too long because it'll become white noise. So if you're going to have a long-term campaign, you'll want to consider creating multiple iterations of content. For us, we don't like to run the same digital signs for longer than 3 to 4 weeks. So if I'm marketing, say, an exhibit that will be up for a month and a half to 2 months, then I'll create multiple signs that either look similar or have similar messaging so that it's clearly part of the same campaign, but so that it's fresh enough to renew interest in the information on the digital signs. This is also an important consideration when you look at all of the marketing campaigns you have planned. You don't want to have too many campaigns running concurrently because you'll overwhelm your users with too much information. You also don't want different campaigns to look too similar or have messaging or language that is too similar. This will lead to muddying the waters and confusing your audiences. That being said, you still want to make sure that all of your marketing efforts are still on brand. There's a fine line that you sometimes need to walk between creating marketing campaigns that are unique enough to stand on their own while still maintaining the overall brand of your library. For me, I often stick with a handful of fonts across most of the content I create and stick with a professional yet friendly tone. That's part of our brand, but I change it up with colors and graphics across the different campaigns. Think about what modalities you want to use. This goes back to how your target audiences get their information, both passively and actively. Maybe email blasts work to communicate with some of your target audiences, or print marketing, things like bookmarks or quarter sheets, are more effective for communicating with other audiences. And don't forget how much your marketing and decision-making is influenced by your resources. Marketing is big business and can cost a lot, both in financial costs as well as manpower. It takes a lot of time to plan a marketing campaign, create the content, and deploy the content. If marketing is only a small part of your job and you don't have a team of people helping, it can be really difficult to implement a large-scale campaign. You need to consider what you can realistically implement given your staffing and likely your budget limitations, if you even have a budget. We're finally at the point where we can plan the actual content, which for me is a lot of fun since it allows me to be creative while also being strategic. I encourage you to think about using multiple formats. Most of my marketing campaigns include print media, such as bookmarks or quarter sheets, digital signage across multiple locations, and emails, as well as social media posts that are targeted towards different audiences on different platforms. Understanding where your target audiences spend their time on social media should play a part in how, when, and what you post. Take into account accessibility and diversity and inclusion. Make sure that the images you post on social media have alt text. Stick with mostly sans fonts since they're easier for people to read. Add captioning to your videos. And make sure that if you post pictures of people, they're representative of the audiences you are targeting. Lastly, think about ways you can reuse content, either as is or with slight modifications. I do this in conjunction with layering or scaffolding content and a deployment schedule across multiple formats and social media platforms. For example, I may create a series of graphics with the same message and different black and white images. On day one, I'll send out an email with one image. 2 days later, I'll schedule a post on Facebook with another image. 2 days after that, I'll schedule another post on Instagram with a third image. This way, even if there is overlap and someone sees more than one of those graphics, it won't become redundant and instead will be reinforcing. Now I'll share a couple of marketing campaigns that I created. This campaign was for a poster exhibit we hosted in the library. While the general target audiences were all faculty and staff, one of our key audience segments was plebes or freshmen, since one of the core freshman classes had an assignment based on immigration to the Southwest during this time period. We did print media in the form of bookmarks and social media posts, digital signage in our building and online, and sent targeted emails to freshmen. Unfortunately, this exhibit went live just as COVID hit New York, so we weren't able to use any of the print materials I had created. Instead, we pivoted to an online exhibit and started focusing our efforts on the digital content, including scheduling a series of social media posts on Instagram, advertising on our website, and creating an online book exhibit with titles that would be particularly helpful to plebes with completing their assignment. During the summer of 2021, our library migrated from Iliad to Tipasa, and we wanted to spread the word. While again, our target audiences were all faculty and cadets, the key audience segment we were targeting were those individuals who actively used our ILL services. Based on our usage data, we determined that a large majority of our repeat users are faculty. So we started by sending a series of emails. The first was a targeted email to active Iliad users. We did this by harvesting those email addresses from patron accounts in Iliad. The second email was sent to all faculty members. We opted not to send a general email blast to any students, since one, we knew they made up a very small percentage of our main audience segment, but also two, it was the summer and we knew that they likely weren't accessing their school email accounts on a consistent basis. We did do some digital signage that was posted in the library and on our website, as well as some print media in the form of bookmarks. These bookmarks were put into any ILL books that were received during the span of the campaign. Since our targeted audience was active ILL users, it made sense to directly target them in this way to ensure they receive this information. We did do some social media posts across different platforms as well. The image in the top right was posted on Facebook, and the bottom right image was posted on Instagram. Notice the different colors and even tone of the images. This was done on purpose, based on who we know our followers are on each of those social media platforms. In general, this campaign is a good example of showing how you can still use different colors, fonts, etc. across a campaign to better connect with different targeted audiences while still maintaining the same overall messaging. The last thing I want to leave you with is to remember that you need to assess your efforts. Make sure that you're collecting rich data that you can use to analyze the effectiveness of your efforts. Look at how your performance indicators performed. Collect data from your patrons that attended events or users of the service you're marketing. Find out that key moment of conversion and link it to particular audience segments. It's so important and will make the planning part of your marketing far easier in the future. And take a critical look at your success and failures and determine if you hit those key performance indicator goals. Don't take it as a personal failure if you miss the mark. Instead, look at it as an opportunity to learn and maybe try something different next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my presentation. I hope it was helpful. If you have any comments or questions, please reach out. I'd love to hear from you.